welcome back to Breakfast. It's 6:38 and let's have a look at today's front pages now.
And the Times says police from the National Crime Agency will help identify and break up people smuggling gangs in North Africa.
And meanwhile, the Express reports on supermarket warnings to Rishi Sunak that price caps will not reduce food bills.
The Guardian reveals the Met Police will no longer respond to mental health call-outs unless there's a threat to life.
And the Mail continues its Schofield coverage as its former medic, Dr. Ranj, hits out at the toxic This Morning culture.
Well, joining us now to go through the papers in more detail this morning is Olympian Chris Akabusi and Deputy Political Editor at the Mail on Sunday, Anna Mihalova. Really good to see you both this morning. And Chris, let's start with you, shall we? In the Daily Mail, the front page, and it's the crisis engulfing this morning. It continues to deepen, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. This time it's Dr. Raj Singh, who was a regular contributor to this Good Morning for 10 years, and he wants to reply to the fact of that although he knew no specifics about Mr. Schofield, he is very aware that the environment and the culture of this Good Morning was toxic, meaning there was bullying and discrimination, according to him and his lens, and he was saying that because he was involved in diversity, inclusion and well-being, he brought it to the attention of the hierarchy, and the hierarchy had come back and said, well, actually, we investigated and we found your issues baseless. But it's clear that there's a lot going to come out with Mr. Schofield and his involvement with his young employee, or not employee, colleague, younger colleague, and I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. And as I said earlier on, we ain't seen nothing yet. Mr. Schofield, who's dedicated 2 decades to Good Morning,
This morning,
sorry, doesn't leave his post because he's had an affair. Not that it's right or wrong, but affairs happen all the time. So I'm sure there's a lot going to come out over this next week that's going to sort of pale into significance of what we know already.
And what is so interesting about what Ranj is saying is he was pushed out after he spoke to bosses about that concerning culture at This Morning.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the really key takeaway from his statement is that nothing happens in a vacuum. No, as in any organisation, whenever there's been any kind of bullying or harassment or anything at all, there are people who enable it. Always. And I think what this story today just shows that there are serious questions to be asked for all of the bosses, especially the bosses, really, of the show.
Do you think it can survive, both of you?
I don't think it will, and it doesn't have to, does it? I mean, there will be a morning programme on ITV quite clearly, and so basically it's a rebranding exercise. Whether you've got some of the people in the middle, who make the machinations work, still involved, but yeah, of course, there will be a show in the morning, but Good Morning.
This morning.
As you can see, I don't watch TV. But this morning, no, that's going to be over.
Okay, so you think there's going to be a rebrand?
I think it'll survive. I mean, I don't see why, just because these two presenters, no offence to people on the telly, but I think sometimes egos can slightly get ahead of themselves. But I'll defer to someone much wiser than me. Eamon Holmes, I think, when asked about it, says, of course it'll survive them. Who are they? They'll just get new people in.
Well, it depends what you mean. It will survive them because if, as Dr. Singh is saying, is that it's a toxic environment and that the buck stops at the top, then if the top get released, then you bring in a new program.
Well, yeah.
And you just call
the personnel will have to, sounds like will probably have to change. But yeah, as you say, there will be a morning show.
Of course.
Okay, let's move on to our next story now. Anna, coming to you. Front page of the Express, and they're very dismissive about Rishi Sunak's Ted Heath 1970s style demand the supermarkets cut the price of basics.
Yeah, so the retailers are saying it's not this supermarket price cap suggestion, which the government keeps saying is only voluntary, won't work because it won't bring down total bills, because the supermarket bosses are saying, if you have to voluntarily or not artificially lower the cost of essentials like milk or eggs, then they'll have to put up prices other places. The Telegraph is similarly running a story saying that it could even cause food shortages. Personally, I sort of read this and I think this is a very bad way of introducing policy. It looks like something someone's sort of written on the back of a napkin and hasn't really thought through. And you can't, saying there's going to be a cap, but saying it's going to be voluntary is nonsense. So you either do a government-imposed cap, you either go for it and go full 70s, or you don't do it at all. Yeah. But what's wrong with saying, the price of eggs, for example, one example, has just gone through the roof. Yeah. It's appalling. And these are household essentials. What is wrong with doing something to protect those things? Because this argument that it'll push up prices elsewhere, fine, put up the price of unessential goods, chocolate, whatever, but things like eggs, milk, what's wrong with it?
Isn't there an argument, though, Chris, that this is the supermarket's fault? They're the ones who we hear all the time about chicken farms having to close down because they cannot afford, by the time the supermarkets have squeezed their margins, there's no profit left. Same with dairy, same with beef. So the supermarkets, if them like, oh no, we can't cut prices. Well, come on, lads, you're making billions of pounds of profit.
So look, the supermarkets made a lot of money through this pandemic. I remember the first time when we went into lockdown, they had what's called their peak at Christmas. Then they had a double peak in the Easter. They've made lots of money. Yeah. But nonetheless, supermarkets make the money on economy of scale, on very, very thin margins. Yes, they make massive profits, but that's because, as you've said, they squeeze the supplier. Yeah. And they don't mind if 10 suppliers go out of business if they've got 2 suppliers who can supply at their level of cost. So yeah, the supermarket can be a bit of a pernicious environment anyway, because they go through so many sectors and destroy supply chains. That said, I go to farm shops. They're 2 or 3 times more expensive than supermarkets. So, they are providing a need to a certain section of the community. It's a difficult one, but in the end, supermarkets exist because they supply and demand. If people didn't go to them and buy the goods there, they wouldn't exist. So I suspect it's very, very difficult. Because if you say to a supermarket that we're going to quarter-size your ability to earn there, they'll say, okay, we'll reinvest our wheat into something else and we'll sell a high-branded, you name it, cake, or we'll make fancy yogurts out of our milk, and we just won't sell it to the common man or woman, if that's not too wrong to say.
Do you welcome a price cap?
Not particularly, no, because we live in a common market. We just got.
But we don't. That's such a myth. There's no real common market. Look at what happened during COVID. Yeah. We were restricted. You could only buy 2 packets of paracetamol. Do you remember that?
Yes,
you could only buy 1 loo roll. That's not the market.
No.
So we already don't have an imperfect market.
Yeah, but that, if you go back to that though, that was because we started hoarding. What happened? Yeah. I had a big car, and so I would load my
Were you hoarding?
I'd load my car full of loo rolls, which meant everyone down the other street.
That's you, Chris.
Well, it's just an analogy. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, that's why that didn't work.
But that's why you protect people.
Because there's a very thin veneer of civilization, and when it breaks down, might makes right. You saw people fighting in car parks.
Yeah.
But I think this is a similarly exceptional situation where bills have gone up so much and ordinary families are being so squeezed that there is an argument for support. But it's just been done terribly by, it's like they're half doing it.
The idea that the state steps in and subsidises butter and milk and eggs, I think is for the birds. It's socialism.
Yes, exactly. It's not capitalism. It's not a capitalist market economy, is it? The free hand of the market, and you will find its ways, because you will find that there are shops where you can go to. Lidl and Primark and all these sort of, they work for their own particular segment of the market and demographic, and they find ways of getting it to the market cheaper.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, let's move on, shall we? And this is a story in the Times, it's front page actually. Police from the National Crime Agency are going to help countries in North Africa to break up people smuggling gangs.
Yeah, so this sounds very good on paper. Will it work in practice? That is the question. So Robert Jenrick, I think his name is, he's going to ensure that we we get to the source of the issue, which is the gangs. And the line that he used, which I liked, was, we're going to disrupt, degrade and deny the gangs. Now, I'll be interested to see how they do that, but clearly if you stop the issue at source, then you don't have to worry about the awful view of people jumping on boats and risking their lives and having a challenge of getting into a country that is not open for them right now. Now, we are talking about illegal immigration because clearly we do have a system for proper migration. If you're a refugee or you really are flighting from something awful, but it's the illegal immigration we're talking about.
Yeah, I just want to bring you in here, Anna, because this is not a new idea. The European Union has spent £61.5 million on trying to stop this precise problem since 2019, and yet we had 145,000 crossing the Med last year, about to double, more than double, to 400,000. So it sounds great on paper, let's cut this off at source, but is this yet more kind of whistle-stop tour, window dressing politics, and can it actually be effective?
I mean, I think as you both said, the focus is correct. Criminal gangs, the criminal gangs who are actually bringing in the migrants and often lying to the people that they're bringing over, absolutely do need to be tackled. But no, I'm extremely skeptical, not least because the people they've identified to tackle these overseas gangs are the National Crime Agency, and the NCA cannot even tackle gangs at home. So how exactly are they going to go to countries where they have zero on-the-ground intelligence properly, no foothold, and suddenly break up their gangs?
And another problem, of course, is the country where most originate from is Libya. Now, Libya is the 171st most corrupt country on the planet.
Right.
I mean, it really
we've had a slight hand in that, perhaps.
So there is your how you do it. Because if it's corrupt, you play by the local rules. If you give the right people, I'm talking about the landlords and the gang lords, the right money, they're not going to be involved in that. Look, I'm just talking about, you said how do you do it?
Yeah.
You play by the rules on the ground, and the rules on the ground are very different to our high-minded rules in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, okay, one final quick story. We've had Turkish elections and that familiar margin of victory, 52 to 48.
I know.
Of Brexit, but we have continuity of power in Turkey.
52-48, there's some kind of magical sorcery going on, isn't there? So we got President Erdogan's come in again. This is his third term. He's going to be his third decade in power. Yet another hugely powerful world leader who's in for over 20 years. I mean, it's never really a good sign, is it?
It's interesting, though, how he's basically a dictator, yet he only won by a slim margin. It makes you wonder.
Well, yeah, but that shows you that actually there's a groundswell of people who really do want change. Unfortunately, they don't have their hands on the mechanisms and the levers of control. Erdogan does. It's not a good look, but I do understand that the rest of the world are happy because they've got continuity. They know what they're dealing with.
And also with him and with Turkey, Turkey is massively instrumental about this flow of migrants from Africa.
Absolutely. It's on the cusp of Asia and Europe, and has always been a very important, vital cog in our wheel.
Okay, Chris, Anna, that's time, but you're back in the next hour, aren't you? Thanks very much.